Powerful people don't waste time talking about nobodies. The moment your name hits their table, it means you're already a threat. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen One, a room full of billionaires, the kind of men and women who usually argue over global markets, resources, and industries, suddenly pausing to speak about you. Not stocks, not gold, not oil, you. They're not whispering about ordinary souls. They're measuring the weight of your presence like it's currency. That's when you know the universe has already shifted the spotlight in your direction. And here's the fact that should make your enemies sick to their stomachs. Studies in behavioral psychology confirm that true influence isn't always built on wealth or power, but on reputation. Once your name becomes a conversation point among the wealthy, it multiplies faster than money ever could. Your reputation has broken into circles that only a handful of people on this planet ever reach. And that reality alone means you've already left your enemies far behind. And thank you, Chosen One. Don't forget to pay this message back by simply pressing the like and subscribe button to help spread this message to more souls. It's the responsibility of all of us to spread the light. Thank you for being part of this mission. You are part of a force greater than yourself. Now let's come back to the topic. Chosen One, let's be clear. This isn't just some fantasy. It's happening. Picture it. A long glass table, high ceilings, and hushed voices. Around it sit people who control entire industries. People whose signatures move trillions in and out of existence. And right there, your name lands in the middle of their conversation like a meteor. At first, some of them laughed. They thought it was impossible for someone like you, someone who didn't come from their world of privilege and resources, to even be considered. But then silence fell, because one after another, the facts started to pile up. Your resilience, your refusal to crumble under pressure, your ability to transform setbacks into breakthroughs. It was undeniable, and billionaires are trained to recognize value when they see it. Behind closed doors, they've stopped calling you by your birth name. They call you the catalyst. That's not a nickname, it's a recognition. In their world, catalysts are the rare elements that change everything without losing their own structure. And that's you. Unlike others who had to be molded by coaches, image consultants, or carefully designed PR machines, you came ready-made. Life shaped you, not politics. Struggle forged you, not privilege. And that's why you're dangerous, because you're not built to play by their rules. You're built to break them. One of the most respected voices in that circle, a person who's known for cold calculations and zero emotion, was the first to shift in your favor. Normally, this person speaks only in numbers, projections, and data. But when your story landed on their desk, something unusual happened. They stopped crunching numbers and started defending you. Why? Because they saw how you handled a moment that would have destroyed the average person. Where most would have grown bitter, you grew sharper. Where many would have broken, you built yourself stronger. That kind of energy, the ability to take poison and turn it into medicine, is the rarest form of leadership, and it terrified your doubters. The universe has a strange way of exposing truth. While your enemies thought they were burying you, billionaires were uncovering you. While people mocked you in small circles, you were being debated in the highest rooms of power. And make no mistake, these conversations aren't about pity or charity. They are about strategy. They've realized that backing you isn't just good for you, it's good for them, because your rise produces ripple effects that strengthen everything you touch. You're not the type to hoard power, you distribute it, and they know that creates waves impossible to stop. Right now, contracts are being drawn, resources are being redirected, the gears of influence are moving, Chosen One, and whether your enemies like it or not, the focus is on you. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to be the anomaly, the exception that forces billionaires to step back and say, "This one can't be ignored." And that's exactly what's happening. This is no accident. It's not luck. It's the result of everything you've survived and everything you've built inside yourself. Chosen One, they can question your background, they can mock your journey, but they cannot deny your impact. And when people with this much power and wealth make a decision about you, it means one thing: the universe has already decided long before they did. So, Chosen One, before we dive in step by step, take a second to anchor yourself in this moment. A group of billionaires, people who don't blink unless trillions are at stake, have paused their world to discuss you. That alone should tell you that what you're about to hear is not random noise. It's truth that the universe wants you to know right now. If this message already has your spirit buzzing, drop the number 777 in the comments to show you're tuned in, because your energy fuels this mission. And if you feel called, bless the team behind these words with a super thanks. Whether it's a single coin or a fortune, it all strengthens the light we're spreading. Your support is the proof that this movement is alive and real. Remember, Chosen One, every comment, every share, every heartbeat you put into this connects you deeper to the force that already has billionaires saying your name in hidden rooms. And now, let's dive into it step by step, because if you truly are who you know you are, you'll feel the pull to stay locked in until the very end. Let's get started. Number 1. The ruthless truth about why you were handpicked. They tried to bury you, Chosen One, but they forgot you were the kind of seed that cracks concrete. That's the gut punch your enemies need to swallow right now, because while they were laughing, mocking, and gossiping behind your back, billionaires were sitting in rooms deciding your future. Understand how brutal that reality is for them. They thought you were finished. They thought you were irrelevant. And now the same people who could buy and sell entire countries are circling your name, placing it on the table like a weapon. Nothing burns an enemy more than realizing the person they dismissed is the one the universe elevated above their reach. Chosen One, ask yourself this: why you? Out of billions of people, why would the wealthiest and most ruthless minds alive turn their heads in your direction? Was it luck? Was it chance? No, it's because every blow life threw at you became armor, every betrayal became fuel, every failure became instruction. While others were chasing status, polishing resumes, and selling their souls for approval, you were doing something far more dangerous. You were becoming real. And real cannot be manufactured. Real cannot be bought. That's why they couldn't ignore you. Imagine this, a secret search stretched across years, with billionaires spending fortunes on consultants, advisors, and think tanks just to identify one soul who could carry what they called the unshakable mantle. They searched through resumes, credentials, and endless lists of names, yet every candidate cracked under pressure. They found actors, pretenders, self-promoters, but not a single one with the kind of spine the universe carved into you through hardship. Do you understand the irony? They were looking for someone like you while you weren't even looking for them. You never submitted an application. You never begged for a seat at their table. You weren't even aware you were in the running, and that's exactly what made you dangerous. You weren't performing, you weren't pretending, you were simply surviving, and in the process, you became undeniable. That's what kills your enemies the most. They spent years staging their little plays, dressing up in fake confidence, begging for recognition. They rehearsed their performances, polished their images, and climbed ladders built on lies. And yet, in the end, you, quiet, authentic, raw, were the one chosen. Because authenticity doesn't need a resume, integrity doesn't need a spotlight, strength doesn't need a campaign. It shines, and when it shines, even billionaires are forced to notice. Think back to your darkest nights, nights where betrayal left you broken, nights where loss tore you apart, nights where injustice could have turned you bitter. Anyone else would have collapsed. Anyone else would have turned cruel. But you didn't. You used every cut as a chisel, reshaping yourself into something indestructible. Without realizing it, you were sitting in the universe's most brutal academy, the kind that doesn't hand out diplomas, but scars. The kind that doesn't grade you with numbers, but with survival. And while you thought you were just holding yourself together, you were passing every test they couldn't even survive. Ask yourself another question. What made you stand out when countless others failed? The answer is simple: consistency. You never collapsed under pressure. Where others broke, you built. Where others ran, you endured. And billionaires, people who live in a world where everything can be bought, know this truth better than anyone. Endurance cannot be purchased. Grit cannot be faked. That's why, when your name finally landed on their table, the conversation ended. You were not a candidate, you were the answer. And doesn't that drive your enemies insane? To know that while they were plotting against you, gossiping and hoping for your downfall, the universe was putting your name into billion-dollar conversations. To know that while they celebrated your pain, you were quietly becoming the exact kind of leader their money couldn't manufacture. That's the ultimate revenge, chosen one, not vengeance with your hands, but vengeance with your existence. Your very survival is proof that their hate was powerless. This is what they don't want to admit. You were never competing with them. You weren't in their petty race for clout, approval, or status. They mistook your silence for weakness, but silence was your training ground. They mistook your setbacks for endings, but setbacks were the raw material of your strength. They mistook your humility for invisibility, but humility was the shield that kept you from collapsing under fake expectations. While they thought they were climbing, you were becoming. And the billionaires saw it. They saw that you were not a product of privilege, but a creation of struggle. They saw that your character was not rehearsed, but forged in fire. They saw that you were not desperate to be chosen, which made you the only one worth choosing. That is the rare paradox. The ones who seek power rarely deserve it, but the ones who live authentically without seeking it end up with it anyway. The competition you were in was invisible, but it was the most important of your life. And here's the cruel twist for your enemies. They were in it too, but they never stood a chance. They were being measured, weighed, and tested without even knowing it. And while they failed test after test, you passed them without even realizing you were being graded. You didn't bend to corruption. You didn't trade your values for cheap gains. You didn't let bitterness rot your soul. And that's why, when the decision was finally made, you were the only name that mattered. So here's the brutal truth. Chosen one. You were chosen not because you wanted it, but because you became it. Every betrayal sharpened your discernment. Every loss deepened your compassion. Every injustice carved your commitment to fairness. These aren't soft traits, they're weapons, and billionaires recognize the arsenal you've built inside yourself. That's why the room fell silent when your name was spoken. That's why, even with all their wealth, they had to admit you were the one. And now the decision is final. The universe used your pain as preparation. The billionaires confirmed what life already proved. You didn't just survive the storm, you became the storm. That's why you were handpicked. That's why you were elevated. And that's why no matter what your enemies do next, they'll always choke on the same truth. You were chosen, and they were not. Number 2. The last 3, standing in the arena of truth. They can fake smiles, fake resumes, fake status, but under pressure, truth strips the mask away. That's the blow your enemies need to hear right now, because while they were busy pretending, chasing attention, and playing dress-up in the theater of life, you were unknowingly being measured on the battlefield of the soul. And the test wasn't easy. It wasn't about who had the prettiest titles, the fattest bank accounts, or the loudest voices. It came down to 3 final competitors, chosen not for what they owned, but for what they embodied when no one was looking. And chosen one, you were one of them. Now imagine this for a moment, a massive room filled with the kind of minds who don't waste time on illusions. Behavioral psychologists, cultural anthropologists, even people called character archaeologists, specialists, trained to dig beneath the surface of a human being, like excavators peeling back layers of earth to find buried treasures or rot. Their job was simple yet brutal. Find out who could carry leadership without collapsing, who could be trusted when no one's watching, who would stand firm when storms hit. And here's the first truth that burned your enemies. You weren't being tested on what you've said about yourself. You were being tested on the scars life carved into you. Every trial you thought broke you, they were watching. Every setback you thought was meaningless, they were recording. Every betrayal, every lonely night, every hard choice you had to make, that was the data they studied. And while the other 2 finalists cracked in places they didn't even know they were weak, you stood unshaken. Pressure doesn't build character, it reveals it. That's exactly what happened. One of the other finalists was the model of the polished achiever, the kind who had all the accolades, the money, the carefully managed public image. On paper, they looked unstoppable, but under real stress, the cracks split wide open. Their values bent, their choices betrayed selfishness. Their mask melted, and what was left was empty. The experts wrote them off as manufactured, not authentic. The second finalist was the visionary, the dreamer who could inspire with words, but had no roots deep enough to withstand fire. They could talk about leadership, they could talk about compassion, they could talk about vision, but when tested, they folded. Their why was hollow, their strength was paper-thin. They had brilliance, but brilliance without endurance is a candle in the wind. And then there was you. Imagine it, you sitting silently, not competing, not performing, just being yourself. And every time life threw unpredictability at you, you didn't collapse. You adapted. You didn't cling to ego. You chose integrity. You didn't break under weight, you grew stronger. The experts called it something they thought was theoretical, scoring off the charts in consistency of values, resilience under stress, and what they named choice architecture, the rare ability to design your decisions from principle instead of impulse. Ask yourself this: why does this matter so much? Because in a world built on image, they were looking for substance. In a world obsessed with speed, they were searching for endurance. In a world where everyone wants to be seen, they were desperate to find someone unafraid to be overlooked. That's why you rose above the other 2. You didn't need to chase the spotlight, and that made you unshakable when it finally found you. Here's another metaphor to picture. Imagine 3 towers built on different foundations. One tower is built on sand, shiny, tall, impressive, but fragile. Another is built on glass, beautiful, but cracks under the smallest hit. And then there's yours, built stone by stone, scar by scar, storm by storm. You didn't build fast, but you built unbreakable. When the winds came, the other towers leaned, cracked, and shattered. Yours stood like a fortress. That's what the experts saw. That's what billionaires recognized. They laughed at your silence, but silence was your test score. That's the irony that burns your enemies. They thought your quiet nights meant you were forgotten, but those were the very nights you proved your worth. They thought your pain disqualified you, but your pain was the qualification. They thought your setbacks erased you, but your setbacks wrote your resume in invisible ink. And when the ink was revealed under the light of truth, you outshone them all. And maybe you wonder, what if you had failed? What if the weight had been too much? What if the betrayal had broken you completely? Chosen one, that question is the proof of why you're different. You did wonder, you did feel the weight, you did face the breaking, but you still chose not to collapse. That's the very architecture of your choices. While others chose shortcuts, you chose patience. While others chose bitterness, you chose wisdom. While others chose self-preservation, you chose empathy. That is what set you apart. Imagine one last scene. 3 competitors stand in a dark arena. No spotlights, no applause, no trophies, just silence. Each one is confronted with storms, losses, betrayals, and lies. One screams and breaks. One shines for a moment, then flickers out, and you remain standing, silent, scarred, but still whole. That's the moment the decision was made. That's the moment billionaires realized they weren't looking at a performer, they were looking at a survivor. And survivors don't just win competitions, they change the game. The rarest form of wealth is not money, but unshakable integrity. That's the conclusion the experts came to after studying you. You didn't just survive the tests, you redefined what leadership looks like under pressure. They thought those scoring ranges were impossible, reserved for theory, for ideals no human could embody. And yet, there you were, proving that the impossible was alive in you. So, chosen one, understand this. You didn't just make it to the final 3, you made the final 2 irrelevant. You weren't chosen because you played the game better. You were chosen because you refused to play the game at all. And that's what the universe, the experts, and even billionaires couldn't ignore. You became the proof that authenticity always outlasts performance, and strength born from scars always outshines strength bought with money. And that's why, out of the last 3 standing, you weren't just the winner, you were the only one who was real. Number 3, the hollow crown that crumbled. Every crown built on lies eventually slips and cuts the head that wears it. That's the gut punch your enemies need to face, chosen one, because the first so-called competitor, the one they called the king, looked untouchable at first glance. The resume gleamed. The connections stretched like spiderwebs across industries. His reputation shined like polished gold. To the untrained eye, he looked like the obvious choice, the natural leader. But gold isn't always solid. It's often plated. And when the experts scraped beneath the surface, they didn't find purity. They found rot. Now imagine this, a towering statue in the town square, admired by all, but inside it's hollow, filled with cracks and termites eating away the foundation. That was him. His victories were real enough on paper, but each one was poisoned. They were built on broken promises, discarded allies, and a mindset that whispered, "If I don't win, nobody does." To him, generosity was never a gift. It was a trade. Loyalty wasn't devotion, it was leverage. And when tested, that hollow crown clattered to the ground. Manipulation wears the mask of leadership until truth rips it away. That's what the Council of Observers discovered. The king's language of influence, once so polished, turned transparent under pressure. What looked like strategy was nothing more than domination dressed up in eloquence. What looked like confidence was arrogance feeding on the weak. His empire was built on sand, and billionaires, no matter how ruthless, understand one rule better than most: sand cannot hold weight forever. Chosen one, doesn't it sting for your enemies to realize this? That someone who looked flawless, who had the money, the clout, the perfect image, was exposed as a fraud, while you, the one they dismissed, rose untouched by corruption. That's the contrast the universe loves. The polished pretender versus the scarred survivor. One collapses when stripped bare, the other stands even stronger. So when the council turned their eyes back to you, the decision was clear. They didn't want another manipulator draped in fake glory. They wanted someone whose power wasn't borrowed, bought, or faked. They wanted the real thing. And that's why, while the king's crown fell, your name rose. Number 4. The collapse of the counterfeit lion. Charisma without character is just a weapon in a coward's hand. That's the slap your enemies need to feel right now, chosen one. Because the second competitor, the one they called the bully, strutted into the arena with the kind of presence that fooled the crowd. At first glance, people mistook him for a lion. Loud roar, bold posture, grand speeches that made the weak feel like they were in the presence of real power. But here's the truth. A costume doesn't make a king of the jungle. And the moment pressure hit, the mask of leadership cracked, and all that was left was insecurity hiding behind volume. Imagine this, a fortress that looks unshakable from the outside, high walls and iron gates. But step inside and you find the walls a hollow plaster, ready to crumble with the first storm. That was the bully. His charisma was paint, his speeches were smoke, his visions were mirrors, and his only way of feeling power was by draining it from everyone around him. He couldn't stand tall unless he pushed someone else down first. The cruel disguise cruelty as strength until truth strips the armor off. That's what the investigators saw when they dug deeper. Abuse masked as tough love, manipulation rebranded as brilliance, ego-driven choices dressed up as strategy. But the deeper they looked, the more they saw a simple, undeniable pattern. Everywhere he walked, destruction followed. Teams that once had potential collapsed under his shadow. Morale evaporated. The brightest truth-tellers were silenced or punished. He didn't build leaders, he manufactured slaves who feared him. Chosen one, this is the part that eats your enemies alive. The bully had charisma, he had presence, he had the ability to make people clap on cue, and yet it all dissolved under scrutiny. Why? Because charisma can only hypnotize for so long before truth sobers the room. The illusion couldn't survive the light. His obsession with control left behind nothing but ashes, broken relationships, traumatized individuals, wasted potential. And the council, the billionaires, the experts, all saw it. They didn't want another tyrant who confuses fear with respect. They wanted someone whose strength doesn't need victims to prove itself. And that's why, chosen one, while the counterfeit lion roared himself hoarse, you stood silent, and they heard you louder. Number 5. The rise of the scarred alchemist. They mocked your scars, but those scars became the very armor they could never pierce. That's the punch, chosen one. Because while the others hid behind masks and illusions, you walked in with nothing but your wounds, and still stood taller. At first, they labeled you the wounded healer, as if your pain was a weakness, a soft edge that made you less dangerous. But as the investigation dug deeper, the truth burned through the labels. You weren't just a wounded healer, you were something far rarer. You were the one who took suffering and transformed it into gold. Now imagine this, 3 people standing in a storm. One builds an umbrella out of lies, and it snaps. Another builds a shield out of fear, and it shatters. And you stand bare, let the storm hit, and instead of crumbling, you learn to move with it until the lightning itself bends in your favor. That's what they saw, chosen one. You had walked through betrayal, through devastating loss, through nights so dark most would have never returned. And yet, you didn't shrink. You didn't harden into cruelty. You alchemized every ounce of pain into wisdom without ever losing your strength. Pain is either poison or medicine. The choice is yours. And you chose medicine. Where bitterness could have rotted your soul, you chose clarity. Where cruelty could have consumed you, you chose resilience. You learned the balance that the so-called king and bully never could. You mastered the art of holding boundaries without hiding behind walls. You stayed open-hearted without becoming naive. You lifted others without ever losing yourself. And that paradox is what set you apart. Strength wrapped in compassion, compassion backed by unshakable boundaries. Every scar that was meant to break you became a power source instead. Every cut that was meant to silence you became a voice of truth. And the council saw it clearly. Your wounds didn't make you fragile. They made you immortal in ways money cannot buy. Unlike the hollow crown and the counterfeit lion, you didn't leave behind destruction. You left behind healing, growth, and transformation. Chosen one, that's why the decision was final. Your pain became medicine, your struggles became strength, your victories became inspiration, and your very existence became proof that scars aren't shame. They're evidence that you survived where others never could. Number 6, the autopsy of influence. They thought your impact was invisible until the evidence stacked so high it drowned their denial. That's the gut punch your enemies can't escape. Chosen one. Because what came next wasn't some resume check or a shallow glance at your public wins. No, the billionaires initiated something almost unheard of: character forensics. Imagine that. They didn't just look at what you've achieved, they dissected the very ripple effects of your life, the invisible trails you left in the world without even knowing, and the results left them stunned. Picture this: teams of specialists poring over the quiet moments of your life like archaeologists unearthing artifacts. They mapped the chain reactions of your choices, every word, every act of compassion, every boundary you set. That moment you comforted someone who was breaking, they discovered how that single act cascaded into dozens more lives being lifted, each one carrying forward the wisdom you shared. That one word of encouragement you gave when someone was ready to end it all. It didn't just save a life, it rerouted it towards service, a path that touched thousands. That time you forgave a betrayal most people would never let go of. It didn't just free you, it shattered a generational curse of revenge, setting off healing that will echo through families for decades. Impact is never measured in applause, it's measured in echoes. And the echoes of your life were deafening. Private investigators traced the threads of your influence through communities like cartographers mapping rivers. Behavioral analysts studied your past choices and projected how far your ripple would travel in the years ahead. Impact trackers followed the spread of your influence across networks you didn't even know existed. And for once, the billionaires saw something they couldn't calculate in money: unconscious leadership. The kind that spreads without branding, without self-promotion, without a campaign. Now ask yourself, what terrifies your enemies more than this? That while they were scheming in plain sight, your influence was moving in silence, changing lives, multiplying itself like wildfire. They wanted to erase you, but the deeper the council looked, the more impossible that became. Because your legacy wasn't a brand, it wasn't a product, it was a web of transformation stretching wider than you could imagine. And when the evidence was laid out, the verdict was staggering. You weren't just a competitor, you were already a movement. Number 7, the power that couldn't be faked. They can buy followers, they can rent applause, but they can't counterfeit the gravity of a soul that pulls people without trying. That's the dagger your enemies choke on, chosen one. Because while traditional leaders were scrambling for titles, clawing for positions, and flexing authority like it meant something, your influence spread without effort. You didn't campaign for loyalty. You didn't beg for respect. You didn't perform for approval. You just lived, and that alone shifted people's lives. Now imagine this, two fires burning. One is fueled by gasoline, loud, bright, but short-lived. The other is fueled by steady wood, quiet, enduring, unstoppable. You were the second fire. People were drawn to you, not because you demanded it, but because your energy made broken souls feel whole. Your presence felt like medicine, and your example reminded them what strength actually looks like. Every time you forgave when revenge was easier, it was noted. Every time you lifted others while carrying your own weight, it was documented. Every genuine act of courage, every moment where you chose to uplift instead of exploit, was quietly logged by eyes you didn't even know were watching. Authenticity isn't announced. It's proven in the patterns of a life. And when the forensic analysis traced your patterns, the contrast was undeniable. Where others built dependency, you created independence. Where others demanded blind loyalty, you earned organic respect. Where others hoarded power to build fragile empires, you cultivated communities that couldn't be toppled. Where others gathered sheep, you grew leaders. That difference wasn't just noted, it was highlighted as the very DNA required for what was coming. Ask yourself this, chosen one, why would billionaires value this over the usual polished candidates? Because they've already seen what happens when fragile egos are given power: corruption, collapse, destruction. They didn't want another tyrant propped up by smoke and mirrors. They wanted someone whose influence required no stage, no crown, no microphone. They wanted proof that real power flows naturally, even in silence. And that proof was you. So while others performed, you just existed. And while they demanded attention, you attracted it without effort. That's the kind of influence that can't be bought, can't be stolen, can't be faked. That's authentic influence, and it's why the opportunity wasn't just prepared for you, it was reserved for you. Number 8, the fireproof soul they couldn't break. They can fake strength when life is easy, but only fire proves what's real. That's the truth your enemies can't digest, chosen one, because when the psychological profiles came in, the contrast was brutal. The king, driven by ego, a desperate need to feel superior, to wear power like armor for his own insecurities. The bully, driven by fear, clawing for control, terrified of losing relevance. But you weren't chained to ego or fear. You were guided by something sharper, something heavier. You were moved by purpose, anchored in service, fueled not by proving yourself, but by carrying something larger than yourself. And that distinction changed everything. Imagine this, 3 torches placed in a storm. One sputters out because it was built on pride, too fragile to handle the wind. Another burns out fast because it was built on fear, never steady enough to last. And then there's yours, the flame that bends, flickers, but never dies. That's authentic resilience, not privilege, not luck, not easy circumstances, but fire-tested grit that cannot be bought. You didn't just survive hardships, you turned them into steel. You didn't just carry wounds, you reforged them into weapons. That's why they couldn't look away. Resilience is not what you have, it's what you choose. And you chose again and again to rise when bitterness called, to forgive when revenge seemed sweeter, to serve when selfishness whispered. The evidence stunned the council because it wasn't just your endurance, it was your effect on everyone around you. The king left behind broken promises, scattered allies, hollow empires. The bully left destruction, trauma, shadows of fear. But you, everywhere your influence reached, there was healing, growth, hope. Every testimony echoed the same thing. You gave without expectation. And that, chosen one, is the rarest wealth of all. Anyone can give for applause. Anyone can serve for recognition. but to give and not expect, to heal without demanding, to stand without needing validation. That is what made you untouchable. Experts named it authentic resilience, but in reality, it was proof that you were unbreakable. You stayed sharp without growing cruel, humble without shrinking, accessible without letting parasites drain you. That balance, heart and strategy, compassion and discipline, became your signature. And in that moment, the council knew the role wasn't just waiting for you, it was designed for you. Number 9. When cowards strike from the shadows. They don't stab you in the back because you're weak, they stab because they could never face you head-on. That's the punch your enemies deserve, chosen one, because once the council's eyes began to lock on you, the bully panicked. He couldn't stand being passed over, couldn't stomach the truth that his empire of fear had collapsed. So he did what cowards always do. He crawled into the shadows and launched a quiet war, not with open blows, but with whispers, not with fists, but with poison. Imagine this, a snake in tall grass, unseen, waiting to sink venom into the ankles of anyone who dares walk past. That was his campaign. Carefully orchestrated character assassination, designed not to scream, but to sow doubt. He spread whispers that you were too compassionate to handle real power, as if empathy were a flaw. He planted seeds that your discernment was weakness, as if careful judgment was a crime. Mutual connections were nudged to question your stability, pointing at your past scars as though surviving battles somehow made you unreliable. It was political theater disguised as pragmatism, cruelty dressed up as strength. The insecure always weaponize your scars because they've never earned any of their own. And that's where the bully's plan failed before it even began. What he couldn't grasp was that everything he painted as weakness was, in truth, your sharpest edge. Your careful consideration wasn't hesitation, it was wisdom forged in fire. Your refusal to rush wasn't fear, it was discernment, the mark of someone who understands that power is a responsibility, not a toy. Your weighing of consequences wasn't fragility, it was the rare kind of leadership the world is starving for. Leadership that doesn't destroy to win. Now ask yourself this, chosen one, who do billionaires trust more? The tyrant who lashes out when ignored, or the one who stays grounded even when slandered? The council saw through the theater instantly. They recognized the bully's campaign for what it was, desperation disguised as strategy. And in trying to smear you, he only confirmed why he was never worthy. So while he plotted in the shadows, your light only burned brighter. His whispers dissolved in the presence of truth, and his attack became the final nail in his own coffin. Number 10. The verdict that reshaped destiny. They wanted to bury you in doubt, but their attack became the proof that crowned you. That's the brutal truth, chosen one, because when the Council of Billionaires weighed every test, every whisper, every maneuver, what stood out wasn't the sabotage. It was how you handled it. You didn't claw for power, you didn't crush others to shine brighter, and you didn't demand loyalty through fear. What you displayed was far rarer, strength rooted so deeply in purpose that opposition became irrelevant. The bully swung wildly, but each strike only revealed his emptiness. You didn't fight him, you let his collapse become your validation. Now imagine this, a courtroom where evidence is being laid out. On one side, the bully's campaign of slander, manipulation, and whispers. On the other, your record, not on paper, but in living proof, lives healed, communities lifted, scars transformed into guidance. The council didn't need theory anymore. They had a live demonstration of truth versus deception, and the contrast was blinding. His attacks didn't weaken you, they accelerated the decision. His venom didn't stain you. It exposed the fact that you were already operating on a level beyond competition. Real power doesn't react to chaos. It redefines it. And that's exactly what you did. You didn't become your challenges. You rose above them. You didn't mirror dysfunction. You transformed it. You didn't bend your values just to stay in the fight. You embodied them so fiercely that your values themselves became an impenetrable shield. Every attempt to shake you only confirmed how unshakable you are. So when the council reached their conclusion, it wasn't with hesitation. It wasn't even a decision anymore. It was recognition. They weren't just choosing a leader. They were witnessing the inevitable outcome of authenticity tested under fire. The king cracked. The bully collapsed. You endured. And more than that, you elevated. That was the evidence. That was the verdict. Chosen One, this is the moment where everything converges. The final decision isn't hanging in the air, it's already written. What's being placed before you isn't just an opportunity, it's a complete reconfiguration of your destiny. It's not a promotion, it's a transformation. A shift in how you shape the world, how your influence multiplies, how your scars become blueprints for others to follow. This is no longer about being chosen. This is about becoming inevitable. Number 11. The coronation of the authentic one. They tried to strip you of everything, but now the universe is handing you more than they could ever dream of. That's the dagger, Chosen One. Because what the Council of Billionaires is preparing for you is not just recognition, not just promotion, it is transformation on a scale the world has never seen. They aren't positioning you as another leader to be forgotten in history's noise. They are elevating you as the spark of a revolution. The authenticity revolution. A movement built to crush manipulation-based leadership and replace it with influence rooted in truth, service, and unshakable character. And to ignite this historic shift, they are placing in your hands 3 unprecedented gifts. Gifts no competitor before you has ever been offered. First came financial liberation. They cannot chain a soul that no longer needs to beg for survival. Imagine it, Chosen One, the crushing weight of survival lifted off your shoulders forever. No more splitting your focus between feeding your purpose and feeding your body. No more distractions of scarcity pulling you from your calling. The resources now being mobilized aren't about luxury, they're about liberation. It's not about paying bills, it's about building a current so vast that your abundance spills over to everyone in your orbit. Wealth that doesn't just change your life, but shifts the lives of countless others. Prosperity that becomes a flood instead of a trickle. Second is amplification of your voice. You're not being handed vanity metrics, followers, likes, or shallow applause. You are being connected directly to the decision makers, the resource controllers, the architects of culture. You are being ushered into arenas where your voice will echo through nations. Imagine your words influencing policy, your presence rewriting narratives, your example igniting movements that ripple across generations. You will no longer just speak to individuals, you will recalibrate systems. You will not just inspire hearts, you will redirect history. And then comes the third gift, protective infrastructure. They are surrounding you with guardians who have advised kings, shaped presidencies, and moved history's levers from the shadows. But this time, their mandate is different. Their mission is not to mold you, not to manipulate you, not to exploit you. It is to protect your authenticity. What they are building around you is not a cage, but a fortress, a shield that keeps corruption out while keeping you accessible to those you serve. Elevated, but never untouchable, shielded, but never silenced. And perhaps most extraordinary of all, they are giving you what no one else in history has ever received: complete, creative, control. No hidden strings, no corporate investors pulling your vision apart. No quotas, no agendas, no scripts to obey. The only expectation is this: that you remain authentically yourself while using these tools to serve the greater good. Chosen One, this is not an offer, it's a coronation. The crown is not made of gold or jewels, but of scars, integrity, and truth. And with these three gifts, the Council has made it clear, you are not just being given a seat at the table. You are the table. You are the movement. You are the revolution. Number 12, the proof that silence couldn't kill. The world has enough loud frauds. It's starving for the quiet strength of the real. That's where you come in, Chosen One. Because what humanity doesn't need is another hollow figure confusing volume with authority. Another counterfeit leader mistaking control for influence. Another polished voice prioritizing image over impact. No, the world is desperate for something entirely different. Now imagine this: two bridges spanning the same river. One is flashy, painted gold, dazzling under the sun, but it collapses under the first storm. The other is plain, scarred by weather, carrying cracks that tell stories of endurance. And yet that second bridge is the one people trust their lives on. That's you. Not polished to perfection, not pretending you never bled, but standing, scarred and steady, strong enough to carry millions across. The world needs someone who leads from scars without hiding them. Someone who serves from wounds yet refuses to be defined by them. Someone who carries pain but transforms it into medicine for others. And every fire you walked through was shaping that exact person. Every betrayal didn't break you. It sharpened your discernment without turning you paranoid. Every loss didn't destroy you. It stripped away illusions, leaving only what truly matters, without making you bitter about what doesn't. Every injustice didn't deform you. It refined you into the rare kind of leader that can wield power without being poisoned by it. Character isn't built in comfort, it's revealed in conflict. And Chosen One, every moment you chose love over fear, service over selfishness, truth over convenience, compassion over cruelty, you were building the architecture of a soul that could handle responsibility without corruption. That's why the Council couldn't deny you. That's why the billionaires couldn't ignore you. And that's why the world needs you now more than ever. Because the world has had enough leaders who shine for themselves. What it is desperate for is a leader who shines for others, and that is exactly who you have become. Number 13, the crowned healer the world tried to break. They mocked your wounds, but now your scars are the throne they can't touch. That's the truth, Chosen One, because none of what you endured was random. Every fire, every betrayal, every heartbreak was not punishment. It was shaping. The universe was chiseling you down to the core so that when you rose, you would rise uncorrupted, undeniable, unshakable. And never forget this: your elevation is not for you alone. You are being positioned as living proof that real power does not crush, it carries. That true influence does not exploit, it uplifts. That authentic leadership does not manufacture blind followers, it multiplies leaders. Now imagine this: two wells in the desert. One is filled by artifice, pumped and staged for appearances. But when people draw from it, they find it dry, poisoned, fake. The other is scarred, weathered by storms, carved deeper through years of pressure, and yet it overflows with water pure enough to save lives. You are that second well, not perfect, but real, not polished, but overflowing. And it is your cracks that make you trustworthy, because they prove you bled and still chose to pour. Your story will stand as testimony to a watching world that character still matters, that integrity still has weight, that authenticity still has weight triumphs, even in an age where manipulation and hollow performances sit on thrones. What felt like scales measuring your worth were, in truth, scales measuring the world's readiness for you. And now the balance has tipped. They are ready. The strongest healers aren't the untouched, they're the scarred who refuse to quit. You embody the archetype of the wounded healer, one of the most powerful forces alive. Unlike those who preach from superiority, privilege, or empty theory, you guide with wisdom carved from fire. Your scars have become sacred symbols, not of weakness, but of survival sharpened into strength. Not of pity, but of power. Not just for you, but for every single soul that crosses your path. You don't inspire through perfection, you inspire through proof. Proof that survival can harden into strength. Proof that trauma can transform into triumph. Proof that wounds can be turned into weapons of wisdom. And chosen one. That proof is why the world needs you now more than ever. And chosen one, what you've just heard is more than a message. It's a mirror of who you truly are becoming. The world is watching, enemies are trembling, and your rise is unstoppable. If this resonated with your soul, press the like button if you haven't already. It helps push this truth into more lives who need it. And if you're still not part of our family, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Stay connected, because this is only the beginning and you do not want to miss what comes next. Your story is still unfolding. Be here for it.